Welcome back to the Financing Simplified. Let me pull this back up. I'm reaching over.
Welcome to the Financing Simplified Podcast with Anthony Venuto. If you're looking for answers to your financial questions, let Anthony and his network of friends and associates answer regular questions that regular people have about their money. Thanks for tuning in. It's time to start simplifying your finances.
Welcome back to the Financing Simplified Podcast. This week I have the honor and privilege to bring in Michael Sistilli to the podcast. He's an experienced real estate agent and mortgage professional. We're going to have an interesting conversation this week about some of our experiences being in our 40s and having this interesting environment that we're in now, talking to young first-time home buyers. But Mike, I want to give you the floor. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about what you do.
Well, my name is Michael Sistilli. I've been a mortgage professional since 2009. I've been a realtor since 2020. I've been in the business long enough that I've seen the ups and downs. I've gone through all the market fluctuations, market changes. I've channeled a lot of my experiences to help first-time home buyers, basically help individuals with any of their real estate needs.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to see the combo, right? To see the mortgage real estate combo. It's really interesting. And you were mentioning off camera, we talking about like private lending is a big component of what you sort of do as well.
Yeah, private lending is something I gravitated towards. I enjoy the ability to really carve out a solution. There's such a bad stigma when it comes to private lending. Everybody just automatically associates it with bad credit ratings or, really dire situations, which exist. But there's a lot of individuals who they use private lending to their advantage, such as self-employed business owners. Because let's be frank, you want to grow your business or you need to access some funds. The bank is not always the best place to go because they just don't understand what you're trying to do. They're ticking boxes.
Yep.
And when you want to buy some more equipment or you need to, even if you're just looking to invest and you want to buy an investment property, you got some equity in your home, it's a lot easier to work with somebody who understands what you're trying to do versus just answering questions at a bank. One thing I found is that when you're dealing on this side, whether it's on the real estate side or it's on the financing side, a lot of it is the same because people are just trying to get ahead. And, they come to us to figure out how can I get ahead? And there's so much misinformation in the market that it's almost made our job a lot harder because we're trying to simplify it for you. This is a conversation that comes up a lot is like, well, why would I do a second mortgage and pay 13-14%? And we're like, yes, that's a very valid question. It is a high interest rate when you think about it from a mortgage perspective. But when you put it in an entire scenario-based conversation, if you're consolidating credit cards and you're consolidating line of credits, you're talking about 3 different facilities you could be paying 30-40% on combined. Mm-hmm. Now you're saving money. You're putting everything into one payment. You're able to manage it. Hopefully you continue to manage it. Your credit score comes up and all of a sudden you're back in the institution paying A rates.
And think about it right now in this marketplace right now. Let's say you benefited from locking in at a super low interest rate. And instead of breaking out of your mortgage, losing that low interest rate, even though the penalty might not be as great, but you might be saving money on the spread between what you're paying for the second until your mortgage renews, and then you refinance and restructure the entire mortgage into one simplified payment.
Exactly. And then at the end of the day, really, it's the size of the mortgage. The interest rate's irrelevant. How big of a debt are you carrying? That's where the numbers start to really hit home.
People buy the payment. That's what they're like. Can I afford it monthly? And that's literally where they stand. At least that's what we see. We're trying to help clients get into the home that they want. Ultimately, sometimes they like what we have to say. Sometimes they don't like what we have to say. Just the other day, I was talking with a client, really, really shitty situation. I really think bad advice that was given to this person, but they're looking at those solutions and now they've over-levered, and you have to sometimes sit there and say, look, I think you need to sell one of these properties.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's just a Band-Aid. And eventually that Band-Aid is going to get ripped off. One thing we're starting to notice too is Nobody wants to be the last person in. And it's very evident when you're going to be the last person in. But at the same time, you know, what numbers are they looking at? Like you said, they're very fixated on the monthly payment. But if you're coming up for a renewal and you have 12 years left on your mortgage, you got to pay attention to that number. Because yes, you can refinance, go back to 25 years, go back to 30, lower your monthly payment, but you're adding more years to your mortgage. If you're in a position where you can handle it financially, your situation is there, you could be mortgage free in 12 years.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of people right now in this market that are looking at their options. But as I said, like you're looking at the client saying, okay, yeah, you have 12 years left. What is the next term look like? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 7? Well, what are you choosing? Because ultimately at the end of the day, if you can relieve that payment, $600, $700, $800 a month for a couple that has a kid who's in sports and this and that, it's a big blow. And at the end of the day, like right now, because interest rates are higher, maybe there's nothing stopping them from saying, okay, we're going to take a 3-year, we'll refinance back up to 30. If their situation changes, when that mortgage comes up for renewal, restructure, bring it back down, right? Maybe interest rates drop, you offset that cost.
Exactly. But again, that becomes an underwriting, for lack of a better phrase, of your financial situation. Yeah. You know, and it's no different on the real estate side. You're seeing so many properties that are just sitting, and you know, how many of those sellers are married to their list price because they can't lose money. They have to pay back debt. They have to pay off their mortgage. And, you know, I've always made it about, if you can sell your home and pay off your mortgage, pay off your debt, and have money in your pocket, it's not as bad as you think it is. That means there's room to creatively find a solution. But if you can't do that and you're losing money, this is where you really need to start thinking about the next 3, 4, 5 years. How am I getting out of this?
That's exactly the same conversation I just had with that client. Like they had a alternate B lender they had renewed. They want to break it, and they're looking at their payments. I'm like, and ridiculously enough, it's about $8,000 a month, right? Just the mortgage payment on this property plus the property taxes, all the stuff that comes along with it. And they're like, yeah, but we're gonna wait to sell. I'm like, you guys are already missing payments.
Yeah,
like you're looking at it going, at some point you have to pull that chute. Back to your point, I mean, it's really interesting to see, like we had the same conversation with a client where they're in a equity lender, they're with an alternate side lender paying $8,000 a month. You start doing the numbers, you just look at the mortgage payment, look at the property tax, look at the carrying cost on the property, and they're like, we're going to wait to sell the property. When the market turns over, I'm like, well, the market could turn over tomorrow, it can turn over in 6 months from now, but you're at $10,000 a month. That's $60,000 that you're losing over the next. Yeah, but they're looking at the price of the home. Yeah. But they're not realizing the carrying cost every month that they're already missing payments on or struggling. I'm like, it's time to cut your ties. At least you come back with some money. You still have, they had another rental property. You still have a property. You're still committed to the market. And there's nothing to say that you can't do it down the road. But whatever advice you were given when they bought these homes was just strictly all bad advice.
Yeah. And just because something works for somebody doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Exactly.
You know, like I always preach the 2 A's, affordability and accountability. So yeah, on paper, it looks like you can afford something, but should you really be taking that on? You know, like a mortgage payment is, if you did a 5-year fixed, a mortgage, it's not changing. For 60 months, it's not changing. It's the easiest payment you have because you know what it is every month. But what if your roof goes? What if your plumbing goes? What if an appliance goes? Like I just had my dishwasher go, and I'm like, okay, great. There's an expenditure I didn't really, think about right now, but these things happen. It's no different than buying a car. Everybody could go buy an expensive car because the monthly payment's not going to change. But now your brakes go, oh, that's a lot of money. Your oil changes, you're this, you're that. So like you said, it's not just about the asset you're purchasing, it's the carrying costs. And that's where people really start to understand it. And a lot of people are fortunate because they don't realize that the banks don't take into consideration car insurance.
Yeah.
Because if they started bringing in car insurance, a lot of people be screwed because those are some expensive payments.
What if the banks actually really started to look at all the people's expenses, like their Netflix, their Spotify, all their subscriptions? Like, I mean, realistically, The
Like on a
banks,
subscription base you're talking about?
well, let's
Anything.
Like
More money you
reoccurring
spend.
costs.
yeah, anything that yes, obviously we understand that you can cut those things, but realistically, like you said, insurance is one of those things the banks don't look at. Just the way the banks, when they look at income, they don't look at the net income. They look at the gross income for salaried and hourly people. So if you're making $100,000 a year, take 20,000 right off the top. You're qualifying at 100, but you're only making 80.
Yeah.
When getting a mortgage, do they also look at the property tax on
Oh,
on
of
that?
course.
They do.
Of course.
Principal, interest, taxes, and heating. Yeah.
Like
Oh.
there's no questions about it.
Nope. And that's a big thing that a lot of people, I've actually, believe it or not, ran into a whole bunch of peer pros. I'm like, who did this? Right. And you're sitting there going, I don't get this. And my ratio is already extended here. Like, so for those debt servicing ratios, those are how the banks look at things. And I'm like, you're buying a property here. It's in Nobleton. It's like, that's 10 grand, not 5.
Yeah.
Like,
It's funny because I don't even like pre-approvals to me are not worth the paper
No.
they're written on. What I like to do with my clients, they say, listen, if you're seriously looking to buy a property, find the area that you want. Pick 2 or 3 properties that you can honestly say, I would put an offer on this today, and let's run those actual numbers.
I mean, having this conversation, I mean, I feel like there's so much information that a lot of first-time home buyers are missing out on. Like all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, going through the ropes. We were talking about it off camera about, being young and, adventurous, going out, partying, spending money foolishly. And some of the decisions I wish I would have made differently. But I think nowadays it's really without the parents to get to that point, without the parents, a lot of people just don't have the ability to put that down payment.
No, they don't. And that's the craziest thing. And people would always ask, why would you rent versus buy? You're paying somebody else's mortgage. Yeah, on the surface, but do you have a down payment to buy something? And then even too, when you have a down payment, like how much of it is yours? How much of it is a gift? And it's all part and parcel with, are you able to carry this property? At the end of the day, even on the real estate side, when we're working with buyers or you're working with sellers, everybody wants top dollar for their house. The buyer wants to pay as little as possible. And then the minute that buyer gets that property and all of a sudden he thinks it's a castle again. So, my house is worth $2 million. I'm going to get all this equity out of it. But you just only wanted to pay 1.6. Where did the extra 400,000 come from?
Well, eventually, I was going to say, the buyer becomes the seller when the foot changes, when the shoes change. It's a whole different dynamic. And I think stepping out of the space, getting into reality, I think this is the most important stuff, because there's a lot of shit talkers out there. They hate and they blah, blah, blah. It's all this, it's their fault. It's the bank's fault. And I'm like, that's fine. But at the end of the day, last time I checked, we all had free will.
Yeah, no.
we all have the ability to make those decisions. And like you said, all we're trying to do is get ahead. Like people shit on investors for trying to do that. And I sit there and say, you know what? We live in a country that forced that. They forced people to look at alternate ways to subsidize retirement, because you can't depend on CPP and OAS. You're not going to depend on $15,000 per person if you're retired. That's not going to cover your property tax. It's not going to cover the cost of food. So they're looking at it going, I need to buy an investment property so I can get this little bit of rent coming in as I retire.
Well, let me step in on something. Mike, as of late, you've been selling like crazy. You've been leasing, selling, buying, all of that, right? What started this? What pushed all of this flux? Because you've been selling expensive homes. You've been selling, $1 million homes. How is this? How is this looking to you?
It's really individual based. Like the team that I'm with, the Vela Real Estate Group, we have a strong group of realtors, and we really dive into each client and their situation and what they're trying to do and understand it. On the buying side, you're working with buyers who are qualified. They are able to make the purchases that they want to do. On the selling side, it's not as easy. We may show the results, but they could have been on the market for a while. There may have had to been price changes. There may have had to been improvements to the house. But then again, like I said before, you don't know what their motivation is. Mm-hmm. They may have to sell because their back's against the wall. versus just selling because the time's right. Like I'm a big proponent of downsizing. Empty nesters, parents, they're living in these 2,500 square foot homes. They don't need that space. They don't have a mortgage. Put that money in your pocket, enjoy the rest of your life.
But the problem with that, like my parents, is they have the exact same situation. It's just they don't want to move the comfort. It's
Yeah,
the comfort.
well,
So you're right. It's way too big. My parents have 4 bedroom. They use one, but they feel uncomfortable to downsize. So what do you say to those people that should be downsizing?
There's nothing you can say to them. It's again, it's individual based, case by case basis. Like, you may like the idea of downsizing, but like you said, you don't want to lose the comfort of your own home. Someone doesn't want to go into a condo.
And they don't know, like ultimately I've had clients that have tried to balance both because they're like, we bought a condo for our parents and we don't know if they're going to like it. Right. So, and it's like, you don't want to also commit to the selling of that home, that family home, until you sort of know, are they going to be okay there, especially if maybe they're widowed. And literally, I look at these scenarios because as we talk to clients, we're not just mortgage brokers, but we're also sort of, I don't want to say like financial mortgage planners. You're looking at it from a long-term perspective. Like, ask the question, where do you see yourself retiring? Because let's face it, a lot of people I talk to, they're scared about the healthcare system. They're like, I don't know what's going to happen. We have all these, new to Canada individuals coming. It's bombarding. It's overworking the system. And you're sort of saying, okay, well, if you were to find a live-in nanny or someone to come take care of you, how much would that cost you? Right?
Do you even have the space for it?
Do you have the space to have your home retrofitted, or do you have a live-in someone to take care of you? And how much does that cost so that you can actually rent out the remaining years of your home with someone taking care of it? And then you have the flip side. We see a lot of situations, unfortunately, where kids can't wait for the parents to kick the bucket so that they can just list that house right away and take it.
That's horrible. I hope not.
It's sad. It's sad, guys.
It's the truth.
It's the truth.
It's the truth.
It's the truth.
That's terrible.
And it's shame on them. I mean, as I said, for that, but ultimately they're looking at it as it's mine, right?
So obviously, Anthony's a mortgage broker, and we've discussed this, a lot. But I'm going to ask you now: do you see the bank of mom and dad come into play a lot?
Oh yeah,
Like,
it's always been there. Now it's even more relevant.
Yeah.
Like
has it accelerated now?
Yes.
Yes.
And the amounts have gotten larger.
Yeah.
The amounts have gotten larger.
That's exactly what we talked about too. The amounts are like, we're talking total deposit, down payment. $500,000. So now that means that there is no more money.
That is your money. That's it.
That is your money. Yeah. Early inheritance.
I call it like, early inheritance. And they're just basically deferring it from saying, I'm going to pay it to you when I die. A lot of parents that we talked to, especially, I mean, more in I don't know if this is a case in certain cultures, but the European culture, some of them are saying, look, I'd rather see you enjoy it while I'm around, especially if they have kids in a family, they want to help them move. But I always said this, the bank of mom and dad was there to help them buy the house. They're also going to be there to help them keep the house.
Yeah.
And
that's one thing that's changed. I like that you said that, because originally the bank of mom and dad was there to help bring down your mortgage payment, not help you qualify. If that amount of money is helping you qualify, then maybe you shouldn't be buying what you're buying. But that no longer applies now.
But no, hold on a second. But even the smallest thing now, you need it.
But that's what I mean. It no longer applies because I'm 44. I have a good income. My wife has a good income. We have 2 kids. If I were to sell my house right now and put that money in my pocket and go buy something, I'm essentially going to triple my mortgage. That's insane.
Yeah, why would you do that?
How am I taking so much equity, putting it towards a new property, but tripling my mortgage? I should be able to switch. I should be able to port. But you can't, because
So
the
you're
numbers
stuck.
are off.
So you're stuck.
Everybody's stuck.
unless you move north, west, like really far out.
What's north?
Well, like I see a lot of people, like I said, for Wasaga, a lot of people are looking at the opportunity. Like you have to weigh out the options. I think really this what comes down to, we were talking about it earlier, is, if you're able to work from home and you have that luxury, do you need to be in Toronto, like paying an exorbitant amount for that home price, or could you sell it, go mortgage free, and live and work from home, especially at your age, depending on your age. How many more years do you have left?
See, again, a very valid point, but we also have to think about it from our kids' point of view. They're in school. You're taking them away from their friends.
Yes.
You're taking them away from routine, from comfort. You know, I always, when I was younger, I always used to say, oh, I'd love to go to a new school, you know, fresh face, you know,
Start over.
the girls are going to love you. Right. But you don't realize that takes a lot on somebody, you know, and like my daughter, I'm in the New Pocket in Kleinberg, and there's a lot of kids there. So my daughter didn't get into the school that was right behind me. She takes a bus to St. Stephen's, and we got a notice from Pope Francis saying, okay, you can come now, there's room. I'm like, I asked her, do you want to? Or she's like, no, I have my friends. Like,
She has her friends.
group. I don't want to pull her away from that. She loves going to school. She loves being around them.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Right. So now, even though I could go maybe half hour north and get a house that would cost me $2 million in Vaughan, I can get it for 1.5. But I'm taking my kids away. It's not just me.
Yes.
That's right. It's no longer
If
just about
it
you.
was me, I'd be in Europe already.
That's
Yeah.
right. Of course.
But that's the thing, is that when you're talking to people, you have to look at their children's situation. Are they 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, independent, able to make their own decision? When it comes to school, I agree. A lot of people I talk to, it's that conversation saying, I don't want to move my kids, uproot them from their routine. Exactly. So interesting you said that about Kleinberg. I was there too. We were in that area there, and now they're building the public school.
Yeah, right behind me.
Right. Are you we're about, like, oh, okay. No,
yeah. So we're not going to do that. But well, Mike, tell me something. Do you have a farm area that you farm, that you are presently working?
Yes.
Which one is that?
I'm basically, my area where I live in Kleinberg, south to West Woodbridge and East Woodbridge, because I grew up there.
Okay.
That's the area I like to gravitate to because I know it.
And what have you learned from this area now that you've farmed it well enough? How do you see the market specifically in that area?
West Woodbridge and East Woodbridge is very, very interesting because we all grew up there, went to school there. We're all gone, but the parents are still there. And it goes back to what we were just saying about essentially downsizing, but that's their comfort. That's their safe haven. And so having those conversations with them is one thing. We're starting to realize we screwed up. We should have just stayed there. Like when my parents sold, when I lived at Highway 7 Pine Valley, hindsight being 2020, I should have just bought their house. I didn't think of that. Now I'm like, oh man, like I should have done that. So now I'm thinking, instead of me paying 1.7, 1.8 for something that's maybe considered turnkey, I can go to West Woodbridge or East Woodbridge, have a bigger plot of land, maybe like 50 by 150, spend 1.2, 1.3, and then the difference I'll pump in as a reno as I go along.
But 1.213 is like a townhome.
No, there was a house down the street sold for like 1.4. It was a gut job, but it was well maintained.
Gut it.
It's well, but you know what?
The bones are there.
The bone, like the house has from 1978 when they built that house
Gotcha.
till now. It's like pristine. Like
Sure.
like the parquet has been varnished every single year.
But
Like, I know-
everything else has to be ripped
it's
out.
outdated. It's outdated, but the home was maintained, and that's the thing. It's right now the turnover too. I'm noticing this is happening in a lot of the neighborhoods because I think this is going to be a propellant for this, because think about it now. Those areas, like you mentioned, all of the kids moved out. They all moved away, and they're closing schools or repurposing schools because it's all an aging population. But eventually, those people, maybe they live 1,000 years. When they pass off, there's going to be young families that are going to start moving, and it's going to turn over that area. And there's going to be a lot of young families, and that's where you're going to get that value, because new construction today, they're not building lots like our parents had.
No.
And to some degree, like some people, like we thought they were small. Back then, like they were decent size. We had enough fun, but now it's like, you think that was small. Go check out what you're getting today.
Yeah. And you're not doing pre-construction though, are you?
No.
No.
Well, the team does.
But you personally like to deal with pre-sale? I mean,
Resale.
Resale?
I like resale.
You personally like resale?
I like resale, but at the same time, I'm driven by whatever my clients' needs are. If they're in the market for pre-construction, then I will go and research pre-construction. But then it's no different than being resale, because now you're looking at timelines, you're looking at area, what schools are in the area, what's your client situation.
there is a big question. Now that I finally have a realtor and mortgage broker all in one, how do you function mentally with any client? Because now you're wearing the hat of the mortgage broker, technically, and the hat of the realtor, technically.
I don't.
Oh, you
I don't.
differentiate.
I separate
You do.
always.
How?
You have to. When I first started, I tried to treat it as providing all kinds of advice, and I was convoluting the situation. I was making it worse. If I'm your realtor, then I'm not doing your mortgage.
Good.
I will pass it off to Anthony, and you handle the finances, I'll handle the real estate side. Because if am trying to negotiate on your behalf, and let's say we're in a bidding war, which quite frankly I can't stand anyways, but if we're in a bidding war and they're like, I really like this house, I want to put another 100,000, and I have my mortgage hat on, but you don't have another 100,000. And that's the part that a lot of them they don't realize, and they forget. Even though you're offering another 100,000, if that appraisal comes back, you have to physically come up with that 100,000. You don't have that.
Yeah, especially if you're limping in with 20%.
Right. But I don't want to be that realtor that's trying to deter him from doing something. So work with a mortgage professional separate from me. Maybe he has a different idea. He has another scenario that can work for you, and everybody can be happy.
Yeah. And you don't want that conflict either, because you're going to be detached from the situation. They're going to get the most objective advice that they can possibly get.
Lastly, I want to ask both of you one thing. The interest rates. Obviously, everybody's thinking about them and talking about them. And obviously, we just went through a little tiny drop in the interest rates. Does it even make a difference? Do you feel like it'll make any difference other than maybe convincing people now is the good time to do stuff? What do you guys think?
I'll kick it off. I don't think 50 to 1% cut in interest rates is going to move the needle in Canada right now, because affordability is still at an all-time high. Home prices are still relatively expensive. And the other thing is the big question around job security. I mean, right now, you don't want to be making a move if you don't know what your future has in store. So I think we have some pretty negative winds coming our way. And I've always said this from the beginning. When we look at the Bank of Canada, everyone thinks about the Bank of Canada and housing are synonymous, which we tie them together. But the Bank of Canada is not really concerned wholeheartedly with the housing market. They're looking at inflation. They're looking at the economy. Right now, we have the jobs reports come up.
So why are we putting them together?
Because everyone associates the Bank of Canada with interest rate drops impacting interest rates on your mortgages, because they go hand in hand, right? It is a very common thing. But the Bank of Canada is not saying, we need home prices to potentially come back. Maybe there's an ulterior motive behind the scenes, but they monitor housing. But they're literally, their objective, their single, I will argue, dual mandate is inflation and maximum employment, much like the U.S.
What do you think, Mike?
Like, if the rate drops, it's a nice relief for some people.
Exactly.
The overnight rate is tied to variable. The bonds are tied to fixed. But now, if you have a semi-detached that the basement's finished, parking pad, you have some landscaping in the back with a nice gazebo, the house is beautiful inside, you go in, it smells nice, it looks nice, yeah, it's going to fly off. But not every house is like that.
I always say, if the house is well appointed, well priced, it has all the bells and whistles, then yeah, it's going to move. It's going to move. There's always going to be a buyer out there for that property. And that's just the bottom. I've seen this at like case time and time again. It's always been the case. Like, you look at someone else, like people, and the other thing too is the disconnect between
That's
them.
right.
Like, they look at the price point and I'm like, that's the list price, people.
That's
Like,
right.
That's the list price. Oh, and I'm like, it's going to sell for that. I'm like, no.
Well, I mean, do they do that to start up a bidding war? Is that
Of
why?
course,
Yeah,
they try to do that.
Anthony, how many times have you seen, and this is more relevant on the mortgage side, but how many times have you seen the ugly duckling versus the beautiful cousin on the street? If you have the nicest home on your street, that actually works against you,
Sometimes it does.
right? Like, you're just put in a position where my house should be 3 million, but nobody's paying that for the street, because they look at the street, they look at the neighbors, they look at the condition, they look at the area.
Like, I went through it. I just went through it. Our previous home, we had, as you said, we had done the whole driveway, backyard, front, basement was finished, all high end, like finished the bar, like kitchen, everything was upgraded, like uplight, you name it. But in comparison to not necessarily on our street, but in the area, you're not getting that.
No.
Right. So it's like we sunk all that money into them. We were planning to stay there for a longer time. Situations changed. We moved a little bit just down the street from there, but we were always looking at the home selling at a certain price. I'm like, wow, okay, that home setting the new benchmark. It's lower, you know, or it's higher, but you don't want to be in that position. So like a lot of people will think, I'm going to go buy this house. I'm going to go inject money into renovations. That used to be the case.
Yeah.
It used to be like, you put 20 in, maybe you get 25 out. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I really, really don't think that is the case.
It depends what you buy for.
Yeah.
Right.
Or it depends what you bought for, right?
It doesn't exist anymore.
You know what else I think people must know? Where they can find you, gentlemen. So, Ant, take it away.
Mike, yes, tell us a little bit about where they can find you on social media. You on what platforms?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. My website is simply my name, michaelsistilli.com.
What's your Instagram handle?
I can't remember. Michael Sistilli Realtor,
Yes.
I believe.
We'll put it in the link below.
Yeah.
And you can find us, obviously, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the social media platforms. And we'll have our information once again in the bottom of the description box. But, Michael, thank you very much for coming, having this conversation.
This was great. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. And we'll see you guys all next time.
See you next time.